Yes. Just yes. The simple answer is Napoli is one of the most powerful ships in the entire game and is a ton of fun if you're interested in brawling, pushing, secondaries, any of the close range combat in this game. This ship is insanely powerful. Welcome back to World of Warships, guys. We're taking a look at Napoli today. We're re-reviewing or going over some of these coal ships. We're going through the coal cruisers right now, trying to rank them in the order I would get them in 2024. At least I will once I've taken a look at all the coal cruisers, at least at high tier. Today is Napoli, and this ship is amazing. This ship is borderline OP to just outright overpowered. The ship is very, very tanky, very difficult to kill, and has the best secondaries in the game, or some of the best secondaries in the game. And it's a cruiser, which is kind of wild for a ship to be this tanky and this powerful with the brawling secondaries to be a cruiser. And it really comes down to the insane armor levels on this ship combined with almost no superstructure, amazing concealment, and the secondaries are sap. What's really important here is it has baked in all the secondary accuracy upgrades that you would typically have to use a commander for on a battleship. So that frees up a lot of skill points on your commander to spec further into tankiness, further into more damage out of these main guns, more utility. And on top of that, it's an Italian ship. So the Italian flavor being typically a fuel smoke or a smoke that you can use at full speed. This ship is very, very, very difficult to deal with. These secondaries do an absolute ton of damage. And the downside is that your guns are a little bit RNG dependent. They're 254 mil guns, I believe, but they have worse damage output compared to a Castilla. Not only do they have worse reload, but they also have worse range and worse accuracy. But Castilla does not have the armor levels that Napoli does. So even though we have worse guns, fairly objectively worse guns than a Castilla, we just get into much stronger positions, much closer range, where these guns just do a lot of damage anyway. They're very high caliber for a cruiser, so that lets us overmatch things like Minotaurs if you ever run into those things. The HE, not too bad, but not all that amazing either. It's just really focused on this ship not dying ever, basically, and being able to push in with these very, very powerful secondaries. Running a full concealment build allows you to have stealth secondaries, which isn't really a thing anymore, but it does allow you to almost always, whenever you're spotted, if the enemy ship that's spotting you is also spotted, you get your secondaries on them. It's that simple, and they're that powerful. They're just sap secondaries that are very accurate. So the really high arcing ones are 90 millimeters, I believe. Typically very useless on the Italian ships, but since they're sap 90 millimeter guns, well, we get 26 mil pen out of them. So that's going to pen all superstructures and certain cruisers as well. Very nice to see. And then the 155s or whatever else we have, 152s, they will pen 42 millimeters. So that's going to go through battleships. And sap, as we know, is a very, very good ammo type. We don't get it on our main guns, but since it's on the secondaries, it allows them to do very high alpha damage, high pen, as we've already discussed, and it's really difficult to deal with. Napoli is. In any sort of ranked scenario, this ship is almost impossible to deal with, and even though you don't have the utility of a radar, for example, it doesn't really matter because you just get to push so aggressively, and people have a very, very difficult time dealing with you. You can't full send it all the time, though, as in this game, you know, I turned away. You can't always full send it, right? Pushing into a Schlieffen and a smoked up G9, maybe not the best idea, so I decided to turn away. But this game is gonna get ridiculous. It's already a really, really solid game. We do manage to stumble upon the Shimakaze. Sneaking up using islands, a very, very useful tactic. Anytime you're playing your secondary battleships, if you're used to playing in Ohio or a GK, Preußen, anything like that, you trying to isolate 1v1s at close range, using islands to push up, any of those skills you've developed will directly translate over to Napoli. And you'll find it incredibly easy to play Napoli, actually. This ship is much easier and better at getting to closer ranges just because of the concealment. And if you get into trouble, you always have a fuel smoke that lets you just... It's your get out of jail free card, basically, which not a lot of other ships have. Unfortunately, I overturned and didn't dodge that torpedo. Bit of a mistake there. There's a few more mistakes in this game. but still going to be an amazing match here. John Bard about to go down. And it's time for us to go look towards the other side of the map. Again, not pushing into its Jinan and the Schlieffen, especially when they're pushed all the way back into their spawn. We should really try and help out our other flank here. Tulsa on low HP. Not directly looking to yoink this kill, but I was hoping Secondaries would get it, or our Jaeger. But Tulsa gets to heal, so I decided to finish him off. No use risking any more, and that is our Kraken in this game already. Ohio pushing in, Z42 pushing in, enemy sub here. You can see why I came back here, right? We have B under control, and we're just going to die if we push a Schlieffen, especially on this HP with that Jinan backing him up. So I'd rather get these crossfires. It's much better for us. Ohio and our Vermont are brawling it out. Not sure if our Vermont's going to survive this one, but I'm trying to help him out as best as I can. Our ASWs don't quite reach out to where that submarine is, so we can't quite use them yet. But we do get plane-based ASWs on this thing. Very, very solid. And we actually Citadel the Ohio at 10 kilometers, which is crazy. We shouldn't quite have the pen, actually, but it must have gone through the water into the lower part of that Ohio Citadel, which is more lightly armored. But I was surprised to see that. Definitely trying to help kill the Ohio before they ram, but hey, we'll take the one-for-one trade at this point. Now we got to deal with this enemy DD, and the other amazing part about Napoli is the maneuverability. Your rudder shift's a little long, but once you get turning, the turning radius is excellent. It's very, very good. Makes it very difficult to deal with this ship. I'm not even running rudder mods either, so you could swap out some of the upgrades on this ship to make this an incredibly difficult ship to hit. Much like Venezia, we have very, very good turning radius, just a poor rudder shift. And if you want to go a lighthouse build, you certainly can, and it's very difficult to deal with. Maneuvering around that island like that for such a big ship is pretty good, and we pick up our 6th kill. Next, we have a Schlieffen to deal with. It's a 3v2 here. We're up on kills, we're up on caps, we're up on points. It should be a pretty easy victory here, I think, especially because I'm fairly confident I can deal with this Schlieffen. We haven't talked about it yet, but you do have very excellent smoke firing, which allows you to actually use your secondaries, fire your guns out of your smoke, and not be detected back, assuming you stay outside of that range. And here's another mistake I make. It's not really going to cost us in this case because I am always pushing towards island cover, giving myself easy outs if I do get myself into trouble or things go south. But still, you do want to stay outside of that smoke fire range. I think it's 8.9, 8.6, something like that. We'll look at it later once we look at the build in port. We'll also look at the armor, but just look at how it bounces Schlieffen shells, man. That's crazy. It's so, so, so powerful. Another close quarters expert. That's 4 in this game already, by the way. 7 kills into this one. And you'd think it'd be a win, right? Just to look at this game real quick. Our Jaeger just decides to push north, even though it's a cap we already own. We knew the Jinan was in the D cap there. And he's going to die for free, basically. Unfortunate, but we're still up. It's okay. I need to get towards the C cap here very quickly and hopefully cap it out. Our Johan knows where the Jinan is and decides maybe the best idea is to go flat broadside to where the torps might be coming from. I don't want to call these guys out specifically. Okay, maybe the Jaeger. Maybe I'm getting a little petty towards the Jaeger player. I apologize. But yeah, a little bit rough. And then the last mistake I make here is I fat finger my spotter plane and my smoke, sealing the loss away. So I made some mistakes in this one. Certainly almost could have clutched this one out, but the smoke there is going to prevent me from spotting that enemy Jinan, even though I did manage to catch up to him. So that is going to be a loss for us. And the torps do us in. Unfortunate. But hey, it's still a really, really good game. Really showcasing what Napoli is capable of here. Very, very powerful ship. It's a ship that almost defies standard operating procedure in this game. Next game, I've got a really good one to show you where anytime you win a flank, I'm always telling you guys, anytime I win a flank, I'm always looking for an opportunity to not push the enemy spawn, but you always go back to try and defend your other caps or your other side of the map. And, well, we'll see that not in this game, but the next one. Actually forgot I put this clip in here, but this is an important clip as well because you're going to find a lot of games are blowouts. I'm sure you've realized that in the current year with World of Warships. So playing Napoli into that can be a little bit rough at times, especially the ones where your team is just kind of blowout winning and the enemy team is stuck in spawn. If you decide to push in to try and just full send to get some damage in, well, you might just run into torpedoes. I should have known the Napoli was there. That's my own fault, but a nice example of the ship is insane, but there's still going to be blowout matches where things aren't going to go your way, unfortunately. Okay, here we go. This map is going to be a real good one for us because we have a very strong flank here with our team, and potentially there's enough room actually with the enemy team going so hard towards the A cap that's going to allow us to push their spawn. And again, I usually am going to advocate for people to go towards the B cap once they've secured C or A like this. But in this case, I'm actually going to end up pushing spawn. You'll see why. But just look at these secondaries, man. Fully ranging out on that destroyer there. And they just automatically go, right? There's no manual secondary targeting here. They're just automatically firing at things and with full accuracy too. There's still a very important use for targeting your secondaries because you're not always going to get the secondaries on the right target or the target of priority, like going after DDs or cruisers or battleships. They're just going to auto target, I don't even know, whatever's closest to them, or maybe they target DDs first. I don't actually know, but you can still use the secondary targeting to force the secondaries to go after the target you want them to if there's multiple within your secondary range, which is kind of nice. But here we go, pushing this flank, Sicilia kiting away, Azuma kiting away, a little broadside to us, Hindenburg kiting away, typically going to be a bad choice for us. But the reason I think this is going to work out okay for us is that we don't have any control on A. Our team is pushing very aggressively through the B cap and through this middle choke point. And if I were to turn back towards the A cap here and try and deal with them, I don't think we would actually end up dealing with this Sicilia, Azuma, or certainly not the Hindenburg here. There's also DDs, but we're using our smoke to make us a little more difficult to target with torpedoes and also getting us much closer to the enemy. Sometimes you're going to use this get out of jail free smoke as a way to just push up. Sometimes that can work just with how tanky the Napoli is. And in this match, this will work out for us. But again, typically my advice is certainly to go back and try and solidify your lost flank. And that's what we did in that first match. Waiting out on my shot here because I know the enemy destroyer is within my smoke firing range, or I think it is. But waiting on the shot just for if the Sicilia were to go dark. And I just wanted to make sure I finished him off, right? But my secondaries actually finish him. I don't know if Mecklenburg maybe got a shot in there, but didn't need to shoot. And then our secondaries on the other side of our ship, which I wasn't even paying attention to, kill the Somme. It's kind of like the ship just plays the game for you, in a way. There we go. Nice salvo into the Azuma finally. The guns, the main guns, are not really your main armament all the time. It feels like the really main goal of Napoli feels like getting within secondary range. It's all about positioning your ship, trying to stay alive, and get towards secondary range. And that's like the main goal of this ship, which is not the funnest thing to fight against, to be honest with you. It's pretty hilarious playing it, but I gotta be honest, it's way easier to play this thing than it is to play a lot of the other secondary battleships at this tier. Certainly if you were watching the main video from recently, I know if you're watching this later that won't make as much sense, but I was playing main in ranked and ran into a ton of Hanovers, GKs, Preussens, German battleships in ranked, no carriers in that ranked season, so of course we're brawling it out. But then with main, I'm just slapping people for 25,000 damage into their superstructure, because German battleships have that giant superstructure as a weakness. Well, shooting at a Napoli, not only is it way smaller, more maneuverable, it doesn't have that superstructure weakness. So really, I'm just trying to aim for the bow. Like the upper bow is the overmatchable part here of a Napoli, and that is very difficult to hit in comparison to a giant German battleship superstructure. So that's where this ship is just very difficult to deal with. 7 overpens into the Hindenburg, unfortunate. A little high, I guess. Certainly going for the Citadel below the turrets. That seems to be the more reliable way to hit Citadel at Hindenburg, at least subjectively. That's not like I've looked into the armor values or anything like that. That's just playing the game. I find at closer ranges that turtleback seems to work a little better. in the middle of the ship, and I get more citadels when I hit them around the turrets when they're broadside at close range. Didn't get it this time. That's okay, because the secondaries will just finish them off. It's ridiculous, man. It's fun. It's fun to brawl. I really, really love the close range brawling. But it's kind of insane how powerful this ship has to be to really facilitate that sort of gameplay in World of Warships these days. It's so much more powerful, or easier to play, I guess, than a lot of the other secondary battleships in the game. Even something like Schlieffen. It doesn't get the get out of jail free smoke, right? Schlieffen still gets the amazing secondaries. It's got the speed and maneuverability. It's got the concealment to basically match your secondary range. All those traits that Napoli also has. But it doesn't have the smoke to just get out of jail free, right? It's strong, man. Broadside on here, I make a big mistake here, and we don't actually die. That's the other thing. Napoli has a bit of a turtleback in itself, so it's also not only tanky when angled, but if you happen to make a mistake and go broadside, you're not always just going to citadel this thing to death. It's not got a vulnerable broadside. Very, very, very overly easy ship to play, I think, maybe. The guns are certainly less rewarding. I've got another game to show you guys after this one, where I run more of a main gun build, and we take full accuracy, gun reload, all that stuff, and it works out pretty well too. And the guns certainly are more consistent. But even without running a main gun build, the guns do decent damage, as well as you're just more focused on those secondaries doing a ton of damage for you. Again, in this one, getting a Kraken and 3 close quarters experts in this one. We're about to die here, unfortunately, but trying in our last gasp here to deal with this Des Moines. He's going to stay angled to us. We're not going to do as much damage with that AP, and that fire is going to tick out for us. But the Des Moines decides to go broadside. One last salvo. And here is maybe where I'd like to see us have a little better accuracy, and that accuracy build would be a little better. 5 over pens. Unfortunate. But hey, our team does manage to clutch up and win this one. So not all of these games were losses where I did a ton of work and then just barely lost at the end. It did have some wins as well. Feels good. And lots of potential damage in this one as well. Over 3 million. A little boosted by the Guden's airstrikes, certainly. But again, another 60k from our secondaries. Kind of crazy. Our team's getting overrun in this one, and this is also where Napoli's super powerful. It's not only just a full send pushing ship, but if you find yourself on a flank where you can use an island to wait for the enemy team to start pushing into you, what are they going to do? How do they kill you? Right? Look at how close all these guys are. There's a Schlieffen coming, Missouri, multiple DDs, which are maybe a little too close to us, let's be honest. This ship just kind of lives these, right? Not really in a hurry to get away. I'm angled to the Missouri. I'm angled to the Schlieffen. There's a Stalingrad potentially cross-shotting us here. Our Louisiana right next to me is AFK, so he's literally doing nothing. Maybe he's bait for me, I suppose. But still, it's crazy. And even focused on a main gun build here, we're really only missing, what, 15% accuracy on our secondaries, because the module gives us 20% accuracy. Whereas if we go main gun accuracy, we only get an extra 5% instead of that 20% boost to our secondary accuracy. So you're still an insanely powerful secondary ship, even if you don't spec the secondaries at all, right? Just because so much of their power is just baked into this ship. So there's a lot of flexibility with Napoli as well in the build you can take. I think this ship is amazing. If you can tell, I think this ship is really powerful, really strong. I don't really like fighting it. The design of this ship, like I've kind of hinted towards, is a little too easy to play. But hey, maybe that's what's required to get some closer range secondary brawling ships going in this game. Unfortunately, what that typically means is, sure, the ship can push in like I've done, play at close range. It allows that playstyle. But unfortunately, typically what that means is, well, if you're that tanky at sub 10 kilometers, how do they ever kill you when you're chilling at 15 to 20 kilometers, right? That's typically the problem. And at least with this ship, the guns are not good at those ranges, so it's not like the ship's all that effective, but you're never killing this ship when it plays the kiting game at longer ranges. And that's kind of the unfortunate side, is we typically see in randoms especially that matches go on with a lot of camping, a lot of sniping, and if you play the Napoli in that way, well, you just never die. And it's unfortunate to play against that. It's pretty frustrating to play against that. It's a ship that doesn't have a lot of weaknesses, and the massive strengths it has don't really come at too much of a cost, other than the main gun accuracy. And you're going to see here with this build, it can still get some really nice salvos into people, even at longer ranges. These are still 254 mil guns. So cruisers, when they show broadside to you, you know, if you get the RNG for it, are going to take a big hit. Des Moines here, flat broadside, not the best dispersion in this one, so maybe I put it too high, shells go high, that's fine. But we're reloaded relatively quickly here. Adrenaline Rush giving us close to a 11-second reload, and much better dispersion out of this one. So we slap him for 3 citadels, 21,000 damage, just to show you that even though the weakness is the accuracy, you're still going to get some really nice salvos. And up over 2 million potential damage in this one again. Wow, look at that salvo, very accurate, and finishing off that Des Moines. Dealing with destroyers as well, they're going to shatter on all of your armor. I don't want to be too much of a downer towards the end of this, but it's super powerful to play. And maybe that's just how I need to reframe my brain, is I shouldn't care as much about what it's like to play against, but too much of this game feels a little bit like, wow, I feel like a one-man army able to do anything, and then playing against it, it's just kind of like, okay, what do I do? I'm kind of locked out of playing. You'll hear me talk a lot about carriers or subs in that regard. There's not a lot of gameplay against carriers or subs. And I think Napoli falls into that a little bit too hard as a surface ship as well. The counterplay isn't exactly there, I guess, is what I'm looking for. Maybe if it took longer duration fires, maybe if it had didn't have an icebreaker, haven't even mentioned that, it has icebreaker. You saw how powerful the torps can be in a kiting situation as well. Maybe it doesn't need as much torpedo power. I don't know. There's certainly a lot of power here, and I really love that it's a secondary ship. Don't get me wrong. I love that I get to push in and brawl with this thing. I don't like the campy passive meta and ships that certainly promote that and lean hard into that campy passive meta. And I mean, we're going to look at Yoshino soon. Certainly that's one where we do have to camp and snipe. Not a huge fan of that. And yet I still recognize the other side of that coin where, how do you kill this thing, you know? But I suppose that gives you an idea for how tanky I think this ship is, how powerful I think this ship is, and if you should get it. There's no caveat here as far as, it's really amazing for team play, like I talked about for Brisbane, but as a solo player, there's some serious weaknesses. It's just really good in a div. It's just really good as a solo player. This ship is really strong overall. It's great in random battles. It's even stronger in ranked games where there's less people and generally closer range battles. These secondaries are absolutely amazing. They do a ton of damage. Concealment's great. I'm not even running a full conceal build here, so just to be aware of that, right? We have conceal here, but you know, running full secondaries for the most part here. You can go accuracy, right? I went for that last match, I went aiming systems as well as reload on the main guns and still had an amazing game. The ship just works extremely well. It's very, very good. If you have Sansonetti, he's going to be awesome, giving you extra range whenever you get a first kill. And that's really helpful considering you only have 16 kilometers of range. Not much at tier 10. Certainly something I would be complaining about. Castilla, for example, well, we get 17 kilometers of range, but I mentioned that range is a bit of an issue for Castilla. And even though it looks very similar to a Napoli, well, the problem is the armor. 30 mil. This thing gets overmatched by everything at this tier. It dies very quickly. Whereas Napoli, let's check out the armor. Lower in the water, 40 mil plating on the deck armor, so no battleships are overmatching you. 60 mil, again, no overmatch. And at closer ranges, HE is just going to shatter on that. 220 on the outer belt, big icebreaker, and this is where you have to aim at closer ranges to overmatch this ship. The superstructure, again, it's tiny. It reminds me of low tier battleships. Actually, just to give you an idea, right? I'm sure you all remember playing some light cruisers, trying to grind up your light cruisers, and you found yourself against a Fuso. And you're like, where do I shoot this thing to do damage? Oh, I only have this small thing. And sure, it's tall, but it's so hard to hit, man, right? And as soon as you get to higher tiers, well, suddenly battleships tend to have much bigger superstructures, right? I mean, I'm going to pick on German battleships again because it's just so easy. But, like, look at the difference, man. It's just it's so easy to get, right? And, well, this ship, the Napoli, doesn't have that weakness. It's so tanky. Let me find it here. Here we go. Found it. It's tough to deal with. It's very difficult to deal with. And like I said, you do get a turtleback here. So 30 mil turtleback, battleships overmatch through that, but cruisers won't. And I think that's why I survived that salvo, flat broadside on to Commissar. It's a test ship of some kind. But yeah, this thing. It's got 12 240 mil guns. So that probably should have killed us if we didn't have a turtleback. That sounds like petro guns, actually. I haven't looked at it. Test ship. I always try and wait on test ships until they're finalized, and that way I don't get a false sense of what the ship is for you guys. I want to play the ship and learn the ships as they're going to be when they come out. That way I can give you a good impression. But back to Napoli. Very powerful, this ship. It's expensive. Same price as Brisbane. Very expensive. 252,000 coal, but very much worthwhile saving up for it. If this ship is kiting you, it's a little easier to kill, actually, when it's kiting. Just to give you some tips to deal with it. You're going to bounce off of this every time. But if you're playing a battleship, there's not really an icebreaker. There's like a tiny bit here, but this is all overmatchable. It's tiny, right? Like, this is small. But anytime you see me playing a battleship shooting at a Napoli who's kiting or turning away from me, I'm going to miss a lot of shots going for this, but I'm always trying to hit here. And I'd rather splash the shells into the water than hit here and just bounce. Because hitting here gives us the chance to overmatch through. And look, that's a citadel that's well above water, right? This is very hittable at closer ranges. And at medium ranges, there's some RNG involved. But you can certainly slap Napolis there if they're kiting. There's also just the shelf, right? There's that kind of classic Italian ship having like just a nice shot trap right there. They all kind of have to deal with that. Colombo, a great example of that. All along the back here, there's this just giant shelf that just manages to catch a ton of salvos. That's just kind of how it goes with Italian ships. And that's where it's a lot tankier bow in. But as you saw, even kiting, it's very difficult to deal with this thing. It's very good, very strong. I would recommend, actually, I showed you the build briefly, I think, or maybe I didn't yet. Good thing I remembered. The build here, I went very aggressive, right? Top grade as well as outnumbered, trying to give myself a bit more accuracy in those outnumbered positions. Also the speed boost, nice to kite away with that. But running concealment is much better if you're newer, have a tougher time with this ship. Run a full conceal build. In fact, you might even give up top grade as well as outnumbered. Run survivability expert, concealment expert, and I don't know, maybe give yourself priority target or incoming fire alert as well instead of these two, just to give yourself that option to know when people are shooting at you. I've got decent game sense after, 8-9 years of playing the game. So certainly use some of those skills that allow you to have that game sense just on your screen already without having to think about it all the time. Makes it a little easier as well. But that's going to do it for today's video. That is Napoli. We're going to rank all these coal cruisers towards the end once I get through them all in the order which I would get them. But I think it's safe to say that Napoli's pretty high up on that. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.